Hello everyone and welcome to this live session. I would like to take this opportunity to explain my approach and tell you a bit about why I make all these videos. Because for me it's also important to introduce myself and to share a bit about my journey with drugs. So first of all, if I make this kind of videos, it is not to be moralizing, it is not to give lessons to people. In my life I have made many mistakes, I have done a lot of things that I shouldn't have necessarily done. And it is certainly certain that drug use made me really stupid at times in my life. So afterwards, I was lucky to have people who helped me. I was fortunate to always have a family that was very united with me, who always did everything to help me. And I will be eternally grateful to them. Then I had the opportunity to be helped by people. It has been about 30 years that I have been in the field of drugs. It has been over 30 years since I completed my rehabilitation program. And I have gained quite a bit of experience in this field. And my goal, as I was saying, is not to be moralizing, but mainly to warn young people, to alert them to certain dangers of drugs and to help them avoid making the same mistakes as I did. That's a little bit to set the scene. So my journey with drugs started when I was a child who did a lot of sports. I have always loved football and I also played tennis. And I was a child, full of life, with a normal life in Switzerland. I lived near Yverdon in the countryside. No more problems than that. School was going quite well, so I didn't really have any issues. And then when I reached about 14 years old with my tennis friends, with some acquaintances, I started to drink a little alcohol, but reasonably. I would go to parties, we started to drink a little, and there were a few excesses, but nothing terrible. Then, when I was 16, I found myself in Lausanne at school, and one day on the train, I don't know why, someone offered me cannabis. He asked me, would you like to buy 50 francs worth of cannabis? And I completely, naively had no idea what drugs were. I had never been confronted with that. I decided to say yes to him. Honestly, even today, I don't know why I decided to say yes, and that's where my experience with drugs began. So it remained very, how can I put this? It wasn't frequent, it was really occasional. From time to time, I would smoke a joint. Then, it was when I started my cooking apprenticeship in Yverdon, where I had co-workers who did drugs, who smoked a lot of joints, and that's when I began to increase my frequency of hashish consumption. At that moment, I remember very well an experience where I had gone to smoke at a friend's house. I took my moped, and while riding it, I had a sensation as if I was a little bit leaving my body or I was completely different. And it's true that this experience was significant for me because it was a feeling I had been searching for deep within myself for a long time. It was answers about life. Why are we here? What are we doing here? And it's true that with that, I got some answers to my questions. And it pushed me a little to continue in this search for solutions. And at that moment, we were in the years, 1988 in Switzerland, and the first techno parties had arrived. At the time, they were called space parties, and we would go to the casino in Montreux. So it was the very first ones in Switzerland. Nobody really knew this movement. There were very few people there, maybe 700, 800 people. I discovered the second one because my friends I was hanging out with had been to the first party in Montreux and told me it was an incredible experience. You'll see, it's crazy. You have to come with us. So at that moment, I decided to go with them. And it's true that I found myself in an atmosphere that was completely astonishing for me. It's something I didn't know at all. I was used to country parties or alcohol fights, common things, and there I found myself in a place where we were dressed in an eccentric way, where everyone seemed liberated, where everyone had a smile on their lips. And of course, at that moment I was confronted with another drug. And this drug, particularly, there were almost 7 drugs at the party at that time. It was ecstasies. Ecstasy and LSD were the two things that circulated at these parties. So at the first party, I took an ecstasy, and it was a very intense experience, another experience that marked me a lot, because it was true that it was a feeling of freedom, a feeling of rebellion, a feeling of understanding life, of loving everyone, a bit like the peace and love movement of the 70s, where we found that spirit of celebration and camaraderie. And it's true that I fell headfirst into this trap because the first party was nice. The second party was similar, but with slightly less powerful effects, with a little feeling where I didn't find exactly what I had found the first time. So we continued. This time I took 2 ecstasies. Then we continued the process every week, every Saturday night. I found myself with my friends. We went to Montreux and had parties. At that time, we started to increase the quantity. We started taking other drugs too, speed, LSD, etc. And when we reached 5 in the morning, we felt like we were normal. But when the lights came on at the end of the night, that's when you realize there's a problem. Because you have eyes like this, you have completely dilated pupils, you have strange sensations in your head, the sound keeps spinning, you are still full of energy, no desire to sleep. That's when the afters started. The afters are actually the party that continues in a venue or in a much more private, much more illegal way. And there you start going to after parties, and the after parties last longer and longer. At first, they were after parties that started at 5 a.m. and ended at noon. And then the after parties continue. And by the end of my journey in techno parties, it was true that it was not uncommon to start the evening on Friday night at MAD in Lausanne. Then we would go to Zurich, to Loxa. We continued the after party. Then it would close. We would head to Bern, to Markthalle, and this whole process generally ended on Monday morning in Neuchâtel. And so you can definitely imagine that after 3 or 4 days of partying, your body and health take a serious hit. I saw the faces of the people around me, and it was indeed frightening. I found myself some Monday mornings on the train station platform in Neuchâtel, with a person talking to a pole on the railway track, believing it was a person, and he was looking for his car on the station platform. So it's clear that, well, all the risks also included getting into a car in such states. I have never driven under the influence, but it's true that my friends had consumed drugs, so we also take huge risks for our health. And the problem is that at that moment, you really need something to come down, because you can really have bad trips, you can really have very intense sensations, feelings of discomfort, unease that are terrible. And at that moment, the solution for me was heroin, because taking a line of heroin would cut all the effects of ecstasy, LSD, and all that. So that means I started taking heroin, and it lasted for a while, where I was able to manage my heroin consumption, taking it once every 3 to 4 days. But with heroin, it goes very quickly, and maybe in a month, I don't even think I found myself taking heroin every day. And after just a few days, you become addicted to heroin. The problem with heroin is that it's not just a mental or psychological withdrawal, but it really becomes a physical withdrawal. So when you don't have heroin anymore, you feel hot, you feel cold, you have a very unpleasant sensation in your bones, you feel like your bones are going to break. There, my life really became a hell. You nod off, you have no energy, no desire to do anything. I was at the end of my culinary training. I just managed to finish my culinary apprenticeship, but very painfully. And then I was on sick leave. Then I joined the army, and the army was also a nightmare. I was in withdrawal several times in the army. And at that time, I was still young. It was in 1993. I decided, okay, that's enough. I can't go on like this. So I went to see my doctor, who told me it's a complicated problem. You need to do something. He referred me to a psychiatrist. This psychiatrist gave me some medication. It didn't work for me at all. And after 2 or 3 weeks, this psychiatrist told me, okay, now you need to do something for your life, and that you should go to a detox center. It was at that moment that I found in his office, he actually gave me a brochure with the different solutions available to get out of drugs. And at that moment I decided to go to Narconon. And at the Narconon Center, what I really liked was that it was actually a non-medical rehabilitation center that uses only natural therapies. We will use vitamins, we will use the sauna, and then we will reflect on the why and how, what led us to take drugs. And for me, it was a method that suited me very, very well. After that, there are other people who have gotten better in different ways. But it's certain that we reach a point where we really have to start reflecting on our life and ask ourselves now, what am I doing? So for me, it was really the best decision of my life was to tell myself, okay, you need to stop drugs, face this problem, and I took control of my life. Then I had a life that was really very, very, very good. I worked for 3 years in this rehabilitation center. After that, I had children, I have a wonderful family, and I did various jobs. And everything went well for me until 2019. And in 2019, following various disappointments and different problems, I started using a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of alcohol again. Very quickly, I was almost 50, so my body deteriorated very fast. After a few months, I decided that I wanted to stop. Okay, very well, Laura. So, yes, today I have stopped. It has been since 2020 that I haven't touched any drugs. So it has been about 20 years since I stopped using drugs. And as I just mentioned, even in 2019, I had a small relapse. I also started consuming alcohol too frequently. And it's true that at almost 50, my body couldn't handle it. And I relapsed very quickly in 3 months. And then I decided to take control, to start again, to do a little review of what I had already learned in my first detox program. And now it has been 4 years, soon to be 5 years, that I have been completely sober. No alcohol, no drugs, no medications. And it's true that life like this is completely incredible. So, the reason for these videos is for 2 things. One, to give young people perhaps some tips so they can benefit a little from my experience and not make the same mistakes I did. Because it's clear that I don't necessarily regret what I did, but it was a waste of time. And it has destroyed many things in my family. It has destroyed many things with my children, with my friends. And that's why I think there is a simpler way we can simplify our lives. Then the second message is a message of hope, because it is clear that it is not easy to get out of drugs. It is clear that it is a tough battle. But for me, it is not an incurable disease, so one will be a drug addict for life. For me, that is not true. For me, we have the possibility to get out of it. We have the possibility to create a new life. And for me, that is my message. And that is what I would like to convey to no one. It's a message of hope that we can do something about it and we can regain our dignity, we can regain our honor, and we can build a new life. What makes me say this is that I also have many friends who have made it like me, who now have very beautiful lives, families, and businesses that are doing very well. But I have also known people who unfortunately did not make it, who did not take the step forward, who did not have the courage to get out. And unfortunately for them, they have died or ended up in prison or are still under the influence of certain substitute products such as methadone or other medications, benzodiazepines, antidepressants, etc. So there you go. To conclude here, it's just this little live to try to, how should I put it, comfort some people. If anyone has questions, things to ask me, advice to ask me, feel free. You can leave me a comment on my TikTok, and I generally respond to all comments. And I would like to end with a very nice story. I received a private message request. A few weeks ago, someone asked me for help because they were smoking joints. They wanted to quit smoking. So after a little discussion, a few pieces of advice, a few things I talked to them about, very few things, and that is what makes the beauty of things, that occasionally a simple word, a simple message can trigger a change and allow a person to quit. And she replied, what was it? 2 days later, she told me, well, there you go. It's been a few days since I completely quit smoking. I haven't taken any drugs anymore. There you go. And as someone in the chat puts it very well, it's true that you need willpower. It's not something easy. There is no magic wand. There is no magic pill. There is no magic program. It's simply willpower, courage, having the courage to look oneself in the face in a mirror and say, there you go. It's not the life I want. What I want is to know a better life, and I want to change. And it's true that this is the first decision to make. And as long as this decision is not made, we will never be able to get out of it. Once the decision is made, it's clear that the path can be long. The path can be fraught with obstacles, but it's possible, and I promise you, it's worth it. There you go. So thank you for your attention, and see you soon for the next live. Thank you very much. Bye.